Welcome to the Path Podcast. It's August 9th, 2023. My name is Tawny. I'm here with Ahkeok.
Hey, Tawny. It's good to be here.
Sure is.
And, today there was a surprising event here in Tustin today. Reminded me of that 1980s song by The Alarm, Rain in the Summertime.
Oh, yeah.
It was raining in Tustin here. And as I rolled out of work, pedaling home, it got a nice warm rain because it's kind of... And I was just thinking, like, wow, this is surprisingly refreshing and like a catharsis for the end of the day.
Awesome.
And it made me think about another surprising event that happened. And I think it was really a catharsis, even though it kind of harkened back to a pretty tragic event. I was here the other day, and I was either dropping off or picking up a bike right around 5 o'clock and talking to Sanjay here. And a guy walks in almost at 5 o'clock. And he's kind of standing around looking at the path. You know, this is before you guys got the big Pathagonia delivery in. We'll talk about that in a moment. And he's like, "Oh, is this the Path Bike Shop?" And you're like, "Yeah." And he's like, Do you guys happen to know a guy named Galen?" And I was like, "Whoa, that is a trip." And so, so we get into this long conversation, and it happens to be a longtime friend of a former shop employee here.
So weird.
Isn't that?
So trippy.
Yeah. And so he said that, and who would have known, right? Galen calls in one day.
Should we start by
Sure.
maybe saying who Galen is a
Who
little
is
bit?
Galen?
Yeah. Galen started working at the Path, I'm going to guess, sometime in the early to mid 2000s, and he was probably like 16 and in high school.
Yeah.
And really kind of bright, creative, fun to be around kind of person.
Yeah.
A little bit pretty shy, but like when he opened up, he was super kind of
Right.
the life of the party.
Right.
And at first, he wasn't a huge contributor, as 16-year-olds who haven't had a job before might be.
Right.
But over the years, he became like a really awesome contributor.
Right.
And a lot of us felt really, pretty big age I was quite a bit older than Galen.
Right. Sure.
I was probably early 30s, I guess.
Yeah.
And Galen started working with us when he was, say, 16. And Galen was always a pretty good rider, but between the time when he started working at the Path, he started riding after school every day, practicing on his dirt jump urban assault bike.
Right.
And he got to the point where he could seriously spell someone's name in cursive and manual. Like he could manual with more control than a lot of people can walk.
Right.
For real.
Right.
Like he was insane. He became a really, really good rider. He's a pretty good dirt jumper and kind of had an unbreakable will in a lot of ways.
Unbreakable will, right.
Because thinking of the time when Maxwell and some other riders rode up to do Harding to Joplin.
Yeah.
I think it was on a shop ride on a Sunday morning.
I think so, right.
Galen showed up on his dirt jump bike.
Right.
And he kept up. Like he might not have,
wasn't maybe leading the pack, but definitely kept up.
he wasn't holding the ride back much, if at all.
He made that whole ride
Yeah.
on a dirt jump bike.
I think a single speed dirt jump bike.
Oh my gosh.
So standing up pretty much the whole time because the seat doesn't really go up very high.
Right, exactly.
And not light.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty wild.
Yeah. And, tragically, Galen called out sick one day, and who would have known that we just wouldn't see him again?
Yeah. So that day after the next day, one of the people who worked here, a guy named John, was really close to Galen. They would dirt jump together a lot and stuff.
Right.
And I got a call from John fairly in the morning, like I was still in bed. And I pick it up. It's like, John's like, "Hey man, what are you doing? I got to talk to you about something serious." I was like, I'm just getting out of bed. Like, what's up? And he let me know that Galen had passed away the night before.
Man.
Yeah. So it was extremely emotional at the time, and I'm still pretty emotional about it all these years later.
Yeah, same. Yeah, I had a for a long time, I had his memorial service card on my, on my mirror at home.
Yeah, I still have it with a thumbtack holding it on my bedroom wall.
Yeah, yeah. And I'd forgotten that. What's the origin story of that card?
I just remember that they were available to take at the funeral, from what I remember, and it was a picture that Galen had taken, and it in the foreground is kind of like a flower plant a little bit, and it's kind of a sunburst behind it.
Right.
And it's a really cool kind of shot like that.
Right.
And there's the sky in the background, and for many years, the way I just described the picture is pretty much what I saw in the picture.
Right.
And one day someone saw the picture and they pointed it out and they're like, hey, do you know what's with that? Like, that's a really cool big smiley face in the clouds in the sky. And I looked and I was like, this huge smiley face in the clouds, like in the sky. And I was like, oh, Galen, like,
oh, that is great.
yeah.
Yeah. And so, after I do remember after the memorial service, we had a little vial of his ashes, and a bunch of us went riding. Man, I was trying to think who was on that ride. I mean,
For sure, John.
John was there.
Carl.
Adam
was there. I think Maxwell.
Yep. Yeah, was Joel there? Big Joel?
I bet Joel was there.
I bet you Joel was there. Yeah, and rode out at the Oaks.
I'm not real proud to say I was probably pretty drunk. I don't remember much about it.
Yeah. I remember, I can't remember if we're at Robber's Roost or at the top of the little drops.
Yeah.
Spread his ashes and just kind of reminisced, probably like we're doing now.
Yeah. Yeah. And we joked around a little bit and told stories about Galen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so.
Remember the time, were you there the time he attempted Traverse Rock?
No.
Okay.
Oh, gosh. A famous, significantly difficult feature.
Yeah. I really think that maybe between us, we probably know 6 people or something who have successfully ridden it. Maybe.
Right. Maybe.
And we know a lot of good riders between us.
Right.
It's the scene of one of my most spectacular crashes. And the first time I really, really ragdolled for an amount of it. There's a steep section afterwards, and I ragdolled the whole steep section. That's kind of long.
Right.
But Galen approaches it. The way it worked is it was this giant granite slab.
Right.
That was, I don't know, maybe the size of a duplex or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was really steep, but it had kind of a little ledge that had eroded into it.
Right.
That kind of traversed the front of it.
Right.
And so you would traverse that ledge, and then there was kind of a weird off camber, 3 to 4 foot huck off the end of the rock onto a steep section of dirt that was there was a moment where you could maybe control your speed for a second, and then it gets so steep that you can't control your speed again.
Yeah.
And I went off that. When I tried to ride it, I went off that. I thought I had it, and as I went off that huck, my rear wheel came out from under me, and I ended up ragdolling the whole thing.
My gosh.
But when Galen came up, he didn't. Most people kind of creep the ledge and get to the huck, and Galen. I'm not sure I even understand what line he was trying to do because. I think he tried to jump over the bushes below it, and he came in hot and basically tried to jump over the section.
Oh, man. I think so. I've only heard that story, and I've heard it several times. And in years past, when I would ride that, I would always walk it and just think, I almost can't even comprehend.
Right. What was he thinking? Where was he going?
Exactly.
He ended up landing, a couple stories down in some bushes and kind of mostly okay.
Right. Oh my goodness. Yeah. And yeah, so, flash forward 16 years, 15 to 17 years to a week and a half ago. And this guy is standing there, and he's like, I was one of Galen's best friends. I was with him the whole day, the day before he died.
From what I understand, that fella was maybe Galen's just straight up best friend.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's like, it's been a rough time, and I could totally understand that.
Ever since.
Yeah. Right. And so he came in and he just wanted to buy a shirt, and
So you think it was like 16 years ago?
Yeah, I think so. And so, man, what a...
So that fella, he's a man now.
He's a man now.
He bears maybe some hard feelings about that.
Burdens, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I can't imagine. Yeah, he's like, I was 16. What was like? I didn't even know how to handle that.
Right.
And the events of the previous day, just like, wow. How do you even process that? I really appreciated having that opportunity. I mean, in a call it chance, call it providence, call it whatever, the catharsis that provides.
Yeah. Interesting.
I think to everyone involved, I think, he texted me, he was like, hey man, that was really, really good.
I'm glad.
And it was, I think, equally good for me too.
Awesome.
So Mason, if you're out there, thank you. And I hope you continue on a positive arc.
Yeah. And you can contact me, Mason, if you ever want to connect.
Yeah, for sure.
If you hear this.
Yeah, and same. Stop by too. I'm going to text you actually, because if you're looking for a Path shirt, they're definitely here. And thank you so much for sharing that moment and sharing that part of your life with me, Mason, especially.
Well, it's going to be tough to talk about much after that.
I know. Well, I did kind of, speaking of T-shirts and orders, man, the shop has. Tell me how the shop actually gets to be able to put their logo on Pathagonia. What's the process of that? Because Patagonia doesn't actually. You don't see a lot of.
It's interesting that you ask. It's something that we worked on for a while, and they don't just let people brand their stuff. If you're a dealer of Patagonia product, you're not allowed to just put your logo on it without their approval.
Right.
And sometimes my perceptions are more accurate than others, but my perception is that we tried, and then eventually they just said yes. I mean, there was some approvals and some forms, but it seemed like that would stall out, or something would get like time would pass and it would kind of become old news, and somehow we wouldn't make progress on it. And it had to do with approvals and forms and artwork and all that. And I think, long story short, they want to make sure that the art is going to match their branding. Sure. and they like the presentation.
Right.
I think mainly. And
maybe that the retailer itself is kind of representing the brand.
Yeah. The truth is, I don't know if they softened their procedures, or if we finally found our way through them.
Right.
Or, yeah, I'm not totally clear. But the good news is we got approval, and we've been doing it. It's super cool.
Yeah.
We buy the shirts from Patagonia, and then we have them screened locally or printed locally. And we made special artwork just for those shirts that now we're using on other stuff too, because it's cool.
Right.
But the idea was to make something that looks more like something that would be on a Patagonia shirt.
Right.
So we call it our dirt logo, and it's our normal Path kind of block logo, but the background is kind of a pattern of a depiction of dirt swirled around with some trails and tire tracks kind of in the detail, and then gives it kind of a semi-distressed look and softer feel because it's less printing. And
yeah, it looks great. Love the Cap Cool Daily T-shirts that I think that's what it is, right? The Cap Cool Daily. Love the look and feel of it.
The way I would describe that T-shirt is Patagonia makes a technical T-shirt that's lighter, but that one has less of a traditional T-shirt cut and feel and look,
right?
And this one's still very light.
Right.
And it's recycled, and it has really good antimicrobial qualities. Like usually, I'm kind of a stinky guy.
Okay.
And usually I feel like the synthetic fibers, I make them stinky like pretty quick, and the Patagonia stuff definitely isn't like that.
Right. Yeah. And I'll say this, I have the lighter versions, and I run in both of them, and the Cap Cool Daily, it actually feels better to me on my skin.
Nice. Yeah, I feel like it feels closer to a normal t-shirt.
Yeah, but actually it chafes. Is that the right word?
Oh, okay, less chafing.
Less chafing. Yeah, in sensitive places. And so I really appreciate about that shirt. I was like, whoa. Yeah, so that's cool.
For some reason, when you, I had a sound effect in my head when you said less chafing. It was kind of like, diddle-diddle-diddle.
Oh man, right. That probably matches. Yes. Yeah, you got the t-shirts. You got the Cap Cool hoodie, long sleeve. Those are.
I want one of those in that kind of dark minerally black gray color.
Man, it is so multifunctional.
Yeah, I like that hoodie. You can get all emo in it. You can hide from the sun a little more.
You can wear it. I was fishing recently, and I don't have a Path one, but I wore that shirt and that hoodie all day. It's fantastic for fishing.
It's got some SPF qualities.
It does. And also, for if you're sitting on a lift, lift assisted riding, that's a great shirt to have. Even in the summer, it's pretty. It runs cool. If you're an ultimate Frisbee player, you can use that for playing ultimate. I'm not an ultimate player, but my younger one is, and
This sounds almost like a roast joke. Like, oh, you look like you walk in wearing that. It's like, oh, you look like you play ultimate Frisbee.
Right, exactly.
My brother plays ultimate Frisbee.
Oh, he does?
He's pretty awesome.
Yeah. It is fun. Yeah. So, anyways, and just looking around, Patagonia bags.
Oh, so we got the whole new season of Patagonia in, and it was a lot. It took us a couple days to get it merchandised, put it that way.
Oh, wow.
And what that also means is a lot of stuff from last season's now part of our moving sale, which was also, the Patagonia stuff sells really well, but no matter how well apparel sells, there's always the color and size variant that for whatever reason is still there.
Right.
And with the amount of Patagonia that we sell, that leads to like a decent amount at the end.
Right.
Even though it's a small fraction of what we go through, it's a nice little sale to come check out.
Heck yeah. And you don't find Patagonia stuff on sale all the time.
Right.
Rarely, actually.
Yeah.
And so, and a lot of times the next year is the identical product, just different color.
Yeah, in most cases, that's not what's on sale though.
Got it.
I think.
Yeah. Yeah. So, that's fantastic. I've been looking at backpacks and actually even like camelbacks, the Patagonia version of camelbacks.
Yeah.
And so, but I haven't actually tried those out. But maybe I'll cruise around after we're done recording.
Yeah.
A little bit of shop news, or
well, did you have a chance to check out the Shuttle AM at all?
I only online. And only reading some of the specs and seeing it in person here in the shop, though.
That medium over there is the XX build, which the XX build comes with the Bond or the race motor.
Oh, right.
So the Bosch race motor. That build weighed 48 pounds on our scale.
Right.
Which is the lightest full power, full
motor,
proper full battery e-bike I've ever weighed.
Wow. Yes.
The second lightest, I want to say, was a X01 Reserve carbon wheeled Santa Cruz Bullet at exactly 50, basically.
Got it. But a lot of those full power, full battery, and they're 55 northwards of in the mid 50s.
And a lot of times those are the ones that are listed on the catalog at 52 too.
Right.
52 as well. Because you got them on our scale and it's like, oh.
Yeah, that's... So 48 pounds.
I think a lot of people, myself included, were really hoping the new Wild would be that light.
Right, but it's
a little heavier than that. I'd say it's more about 50.
Right. Yeah, and I was just talking to someone about this. I feel like that 50 is a delineator for.
I have had this sense that there's a kind of a crossing over into a different realm point on weight somewhere in the high 40s to low 50s.
Yeah. Man, a 750 watt hour battery.
Yeah.
At 48 pounds.
So I rode it around in the parking lot, and it really felt playful. Compared to some of the lightweight category bikes, it even kind of felt playful.
Right.
Especially in the sense of like kind of loading it up a little bit and flipping the back wheel out to the side.
Right.
It felt so easy to do that in a way that I don't know if I've experienced that on an e-bike. And then picking the front wheel up, I would say felt maybe easier than a relay. Yeah. So like putting it in, like that's a pretty playful e-bike as well.
Exactly.
Really interesting bike.
Yeah. I should have ridden that around in the parking lot the other day when I came by.
It's a good looking bike too.
It is a good looking bike. They slimmed down the down tube. And yeah, I don't know. Maybe white is a slimming as well.
No headset cable routing.
Oh, that's right.
I think that's interesting.
Yeah. A move away from that.
Yeah, I love Pivot. I really do. I love this bike and I love Pivot. Jason, our buddy that came on the show from Jersey, who owns Halter Cycles, just got one of these Shuttle AMs.
Oh, got it.
And he can't stop talking about how awesome it is. He's like, oh, I love it. It's my favorite e-bike I've ever had by far.
Right.
Like, he's really excited, and he's already ridden his like on trails.
Right. Yeah. So it's what else do you like about it?
I think in general, it's tough to beat Pivot for like alignment, fit and finish, Pivot quality. Right. They have one of the lowest, maybe the lowest warranty return rate of any bike we sell.
Right.
They have a really clear direction and they stick to it pretty well, like really, really well actually overall especially in terms of just like product and spec. And, you know, they put a lot into picking which parts go on it. Right. A lot of their bikes come with SRAM drivetrains and Shimano brakes, which it's not so much that I think that's the right spec for everyone. It's that shows me a lot of care.
Right.
Even if maybe that's not how I'm going to set my bike up, that's someone who
very intentionally
took an extra step that was more difficult to make it how they thought it should be.
Right. That's pretty close to how I might set my bike up.
Yeah. And, you know, a lot of brands these days don't have their original founders as owners.
Oh, right. Pivot does.
Pivot definitely does. And Chris is really involved. He's not just the owner.
Right.
Chris has a background in bike design and engineering. He also has a background in accounting. Like he's a real bike person and a real business person.
Right.
And he has a lifetime of experience designing and riding bikes.
Right. Yeah, and this, man. Yeah.
And Chris is a big picture thinker. He's strategic. He's got whether you always agree with every choice or not, you have to respect that the choices fit together.
Right.
And they're cohesive with each other.
Right.
They're true to themselves, and they follow their vision, and they have a vision.
Yeah, it's hard to find, and he must be getting the right people around him.
Oh, they have an awesome team.
Right.
I mean, from the demo driver to the sales reps to warranty, the warehouse people, they're awesome team.
Right.
And when I've had the good fortune of even, it's funny. This just reminded me of a story about Pivot. One time I was up at Pivot at a dealer event, and I think it was this guy Brian, who at the time was new to the company, and now I believe he's the CEO or something.
Wow.
Like he's the highest ranking person, Chris, I believe now.
Right.
And he was explaining to me talking to me about their hiring process and how they essentially it's not that they hire by committee so much as they get buy-in from the people who are going to work with the person when they hire someone.
For sure.
And I thought that was really cool, and a little different, and to the point where maybe they're getting buy-in from maybe, a front lines worker on a new hire.
Right. Because that person's going to have to work shoulder to shoulder.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought, to me, that showed a lot of, it was like a tiny little window into like, there's a lot of choices like this being made, and they all show a ton of care and a ton of consideration and a plan that's backed up by solid tactics. Like,
right. Yeah. I don't know if I've ever owned a pivot bike.
So interestingly enough, there's something, okay, they have yet to make a mixed wheel size bike that's mixed wheel out of the box. A lot of their bikes have adjustable geometry, including the Shuttle AM, which make them pretty conducive to mixed wheel sizing.
That is true.
But as riders who, myself, and I think you tend to prefer the mixed wheel size bikes, they're not speaking to us on that. So I think that's part of it. Yeah. I think that'll hopefully change someday. Yeah. I'm certainly trying to have some influence. So I think there's some little things like that that are, there are definitely pivots though that I would totally own.
Yeah.
Well, in the Shuttle AM, I might have one before too long. I kind of hope to. I feel like that might be the full powered e-bike for me.
Right.
As far as if there's a full powered e-bike for me right now, especially if I can try it out with a smaller wheel and I like it that way, or maybe even as a 29er. I don't know.
Because at that 148 rear travel, maybe 29er, dual 29er fits well.
Maybe. And I like the Geo.
Yeah. 64, 65.
64 one in the low position. Probably be slacker if I put a smaller rear wheel on it in the high position. Yep. Running it in the high position with a smaller rear wheel would probably be 63 and a half or something.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it'd be pretty cool. I think it'd be an awesome. It's a bike I would love to own, and I would kind of have my eye on one. Yeah. I could also see myself mixed wheel sizing a Shadow Cat. That's something that kind of might scratch an itch of mine.
Yeah. Yeah, because that one also has a flip chip.
And I would add to that, if I was buying a downcountry bike today, I think it would be a Mach 4. Of all the like proper downcountry XC bikes in the shop today, like XC/downcountry or in that zone, it's the only one we have that has a real suspension linkage.
Right.
All of the other ones are flex days.
Right.
If I wanted to go all out light, I'd get that Anthem frame that's hanging up over there that we weighed at like, I think it was under 4 pounds or something. Yeah, it was silly. And then at first I thought it was a true linkage bike because I hadn't looked closely, and I realized that suddenly now the Anthem is a flex day suspension.
Oh my goodness.
Which is, it's not that I think that obviously all these brands that are doing the flex day suspension, it's not like they're making a mistake.
Right.
It's lighter, and it's probably easier to make it torsionally and laterally stiff.
Yep.
But I would say there is some performance compromise, and for me, it's pretty noticeable.
You're right.
I'm right that the new Anthem is a flex day bike, is that what you're saying? Yeah. Yes. It was funny because I was holding it when I realized it. I think I had known it in a academic sense maybe a year ago before it came out.
Right.
And I kind of maybe forgot that data point, and then I was holding it, and I was like, whoa.
Right. But that's a proper go fast bike.
Oh, yeah. Proper go fast. Very, very light. Cool paint job, too. Really distinctive.
Yep. So the Pivot. That's a good bike.
I think we can tease that there's definitely some exciting, well, I mean, Norco did we talk about the Norco Fluid e-bike that's coming out that then Bosch announced so I think it's the CX and the SX motor, and I can never keep it quite straight in my head which one is full power and which one's the new lightweight one.
I think the SX is probably the new lightweight one.
Right. And so the new Norco Fluid e-bike is going to come with that.
Oh.
And that's the one I'm allowed to talk about.
Right.
And there's going to be more, I believe.
Right.
And we're going to see another Fazua bike from a cool brand soon. So this fall will continue to be fun for launches.
So, what is the fluid going to be like?
I would say it's going to be a trail bike with really cool geo.
Right. Right.
And a really cool motor.
Mm.
Because it seems like Bosch has sort of emerged as the elite motor.
Yeah.
Especially by certain metrics. By the metric of how quiet it is.
Yep.
By the metric of how people rate the power delivery and how it feels.
Yeah. Yeah.
And really probably by the metric of warranty rate and failure rate.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to say that EMTB mode.
People love that mode.
Yeah, I love that mode.
Can you describe how that mode does? What's the user experience on that mode?
Okay, so EMTB, it, I guess, adjusts the power according to what you're putting in. And so I feel like one of the places I notice is on techie, ledgy climbs. And, sometimes you need a little more power to get through those, so I'll put it on boost or whatever. But that level of like all-in power will oftentimes spin out for me.
Yeah.
But the EMTB, it really, in those situations, as you're ramping up to move over whatever feature you're trying to get over, it really feels like it almost matches how your application of power
the way I had felt like maybe is a good way to describe it, but I haven't experienced it really much, is it uses all the power range in various situations depending on what the rider's doing. So the full range of assist levels could happen depending on what the rider's doing.
Yeah, and that is exactly what it does. And I feel like it's moving through the power ranges in any given like small burst. So say you're just pedaling along, it's just going to like easy spinning. It's going to kind of match you easy spinning. If you're like full on, like all into it, it's going to match you with full power. But what I feel like is in tough situations, it's the transition between the levels of power, and maybe I don't realize how much people do this, or I do this, is you're not always laying down the same amount of power into the pedals.
Right, you're traction managing.
Right, and it's matching. It's helping match that traction management.
I see.
And to me, that's like where I noticed it the most.
That makes sense.
It's not so much in like, okay, on this one really long climb as it's leveling out, it's like it's easing up and it's powering up. That's kind of like, okay, whatever. I'll just always boost through those sections,
Yeah.
But it's interesting how it transitions through the power.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that's cool.
That to me, I haven't been able to find that match elsewhere.
So the new, I believe it's the CX motor is going to, if I remember correctly, it's kind of interesting. It's a little lower torque. If I remember correctly, it's 55 Newton meters.
Okay.
But it has it has a peak watt.
Oh, higher.
It has right. It has a high peak watt output.
Yeah, the SX, yeah.
So that's an interesting.
Yeah. I don't exactly know how that's going to work. I think that might be actually a cool.
I think it's fairly safe to say you could think of it as a little lower torque, which is just straight, direct, restating what they say.
Right.
And I think the peak wattage, I think you could think of it as a little bit higher peak horsepower.
Right. Maybe. I wonder, does that translate to, so sometimes on the lower torque motors, on really steep climbs, it is still very difficult to make those.
Yes.
And at those moments, that lower torque, higher peak is going to help you in those moments.
I wonder.
That was kind of how I was thinking about it the other day.
Because honestly, I more picture, I don't know, my understanding of it is more that it would help you maintain a speed and less of that it would help you get to a speed.
Right.
But I'm not totally good at this.
I'm not totally good at this either.
It makes me miss Nathan a little bit.
Exactly.
It's funny. We had a listener question.
Yeah, we had a listener question exactly. Says, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the tag. Ole Golshny. Anyways, they ask, did you guys have a falling out with Nathan? Question mark. And I'm wondering, just because Nathan's not here, if that's a natural question to ask.
I mean, that's a pretty big question, and
Sure.
I would almost hesitate to even answer it without Nathan getting to have input on it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
I wouldn't want to answer for him in any way.
Right.
Obviously, it was his choice to not be on the show anymore. I feel comfortable saying that.
Yep. That it was.
There was some emotion.
Yeah. There was.
Nathan, I had never listened to a podcast, and Nathan hit you and I up and was like, "Hey, I've got this idea. I think we should make a podcast." He offered to get the equipment.
Yep.
He offered to produce it,
Yep.
and he had a plan for how to get it on the air.
Yep.
And we were like, "Okay, we'll try it."
Yeah.
And now I love podcasts and I love podcasting.
Right. Exactly.
So
we're like 8 or 9 years into it. So thank you to Nathan for all of that, the investment, the time, the innovation. Like, I think when we first started, like there weren't a lot of mountain bike podcasts.
Maybe not as many. Yeah. And even before the podcast, I always got a lot of good ideas from Nathan.
For sure.
Nathan's got a ton of experience. He's a really creative guy, really smart guy. He tends to look for the other perspective, so to speak, which can be really valuable.
For sure.
His contributions were awesome over the years. It was super fun podcasting with him.
Always.
So I would say not to avoid the question, and I think we sort of answered it a little bit, but mostly what I would want to say is, Nathan has been awesome to work with, and he there wouldn't be a Path. I don't think there would be a Path podcast without Nathan.
I don't think so. I agree with that.
And thank you to Nathan.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good way to answer it. Should we jump on to a couple other questions?
Yeah.
All right, fantastic. I like this one from MTB Allen. Shout out to MTB Allen. Podcast question, asking for a friend. I'm not sure if he's asking for a friend or he's asking for a friend.
Yeah.
So, anyways, what are your thoughts on using your eMTB as a commuter bike? Comparative wear and tear, cost, range, convenience, etc.
It's a really interesting question. You have some experience with this, I think.
I do. I mean, I actually have a EBike Commuter that I ride from time to time.
But did you ever commute on an eMTB?
Only once or twice when I was going to ride with somebody after work or something.
Okay, but as someone who's commuted a lot, as someone who's done a lot of e-mountain biking, I think you might be better equipped to connect the dots than me.
Yep.
That being said, I'm going to go ahead and talk about it.
Go for it. You can start into this.
The wear and tear question is an interesting one. I think cassette chain and rear tire are going to be an issue.
Yeah.
People can be kind of shocked by the amount of cassette chain rear tire wear they get from commuting.
Oh, the rear tire is on a mountain bike tire is going to chew through that, guaranteed.
Right. And even on a commuter tire, if you're commuting every day, you'll be surprised how often you're changing tires. Mm-hmm. But also how, like when you come in after 6 months of commuting every day and we put the chain checker on your chain and it rattles around and you're like,
right.
Like,
yeah. And the grime that you pick up on the road is exponentially more than on the dirt.
That being said, I think it's probably worth it from like a cost trade-off perspective.
Yep.
And it might not be a bad idea to get a second rear wheel with a slick tire on it.
That is actually...
You're going to want to get an extra cassette and rotor, which might be kind of expensive. You can get a heavier cassette.
Yep. Just get a heavier cassette with like you said, with the road slick on it, and you'll be golden.
That'll save you cassette wear and tire wear, and you'll want to keep an eye on your chain because as your chain stretches, you're not going to... And you know what another thing is? If you have a SRAM drivetrain and you're putting a lot of miles on, get an XO1 or better chain.
Right.
Because the wear cycle on those is...
Like
in a weird way, it almost seems infinitely better. Like
literally infinitely better.
It's kind of crazy
how long the chains last.
Because the GX and down have decent wear life, what I would call kind of normal, where after 500 to 1,000 miles, I expect it to be somewhere between half of 1% and 1% worn, and in the zone where you want to probably replace it, and you might end up still having to replace a chainring and or a cassette.
Yep.
The XO1 and up, I have seen them go thousands of miles and have no measurable wear.
So
I have seen measurable wear on those chains, but I wonder what they went through.
Right, right, exactly. Yeah, so can you use your e-bike as a EMTB as a? Sure, I think so.
Yeah. One more point of reference on the wear. There was this guy, Doug, and it depends on your commute.
Yep.
There's this guy, Doug. His commute was about 10 miles each way, and it was pretty flat.
Right.
And we built him this awesome, I think it was a 7 custom commuter bike.
Yep.
And for many, I don't know if he still rides that bike or not. This was probably 20 years ago. And for many, many years, he would come in basically every year, and we would take all the parts off and re-tie prep it so nothing seizes because he's sweating on it a lot.
Right.
And it would have like the beginnings of things oxidizing and
Yep.
seizing. And we would put the chain checker on it for fun, and it would be like, 2% worn or something. And so we would replace all of his chain rings and his cassette and his chain and his brake pads.
Right.
And that would be at least every year.
Yeah.
But
he was by far getting huge return on investment on that.
So it changed his life physically. It changed his life health, his physical health and his mental health.
Yeah.
He I'm sure it saved him a lot of gas money and
60 cents a mile if you believe 65 cents a mile if you believe the IRS tables.
I bet you, depending on your vehicle, it could be a lot more.
Yeah, that's true. Range. So, gosh, on an EMTB range, that's a I don't know that, but I do have an E commuter, and I forget. I always get mixed up on the classes. It's one that doesn't have the 20 mile an hour.
Class 2.
So it can. You
Up
need
to 28
pedal.
miles an hour, no throttle with pedal assist only.
Yep. And so I have the Giant Fast Road E Plus Pro, something like that, and I put lighter tires on it, and that's got, I think, a 530 watt-hour battery.
Sounds right.
And I ride it in the medium boost pretty much the whole time. And depending on whether dead of winter or middle of summer, I'll probably get like 30 miles. And I think I've come to realize with the e-bike motors, it almost doesn't matter whether you're eco or you're full boost. If you're pinning it at 28 miles an hour, it will drag that battery down faster.
It makes sense to me that it mostly takes an amount of work to go 28 miles an hour.
Right.
And that's kind of what I was thinking. And it's got to be quite a bit more than 20 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Especially with the wind drag.
And I feel like right about 21, because the other day I was on battery fumes, and I put it in eco, and I pedal along at 20 to 21 miles an hour. It's hard. It was difficult for me to pedal that slow, but because I wanted to go 23 or 24. But when I pedaled that slow, the battery lasts forever.
Yeah, that's cool.
But as soon as I kind of clipped over 25, it's like tick, 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 tick. And so, yeah, it's kind of an interesting phenomenon. So about on that 530 watt hour with slicks going 28 miles an hour. So I don't know, maybe you get a little more. Maybe you get more distance, maybe similar distance.
You know the whole thing where the increase in wind resistance as you accelerate is a non-linear progression.
Yes.
I wonder how much that's playing into this.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because once you get over that 21
it's a multiplier for every mile an hour, I think.
And I've heard it's kind of around that low 20 mile an hour.
Well, it's a non-linear progression.
But
So maybe around that low 20 mile an hour where it starts to get steep.
You're further down. Yeah, exactly. It becomes much less linear at that point.
Where the transition is in the curve.
Exactly. Let's see. So I will say one benefit of having the 28 mile an hour class 2 e-bike is my commute is 7 miles each way. It takes about 10 minutes off each way. And it's amazing. When I'm trying to get here for the podcast, we record at 6 o'clock. When I'm trying to get here at 6 o'clock, that 10 minutes makes a big difference.
What's the time without the e-bike?
It's about 25 minutes. And
So
then,
yeah, that's a huge. I
Right?
mean, that's like a 30 something percent reduction. Yeah.
Yeah. So that is a pretty big savings. It
And
allows,
if you want to, you can show up to work not sweaty.
yes, that is true. I don't, because it's kind of that. What do we talk? It's like it goads you to go faster.
Yeah. The incentive program.
It is. So it's but there's that. So I don't actually ride my e-bike commuter every day.
I wonder how far this person's commute is and how hilly it is.
Yeah. So MTB Allen's friend, how far is your? I mean, if you have dirt on the way to or from work, man, that would be amazing.
That'd really add to the.
Heck
yeah.
yeah. Or you get an e-gravel bike.
Yeah.
I'm hoping
Yeah.
that like.
I think we have one more e-vault for like almost half off.
Oh my gosh.
That's
Okay.
a 28 mile an hour carbon drop bar e-bike
Yes, with the Fazua.
with the Fazua. Not the same Fazua though.
It's not the same.
It's
Fazua.
the gravel Fazua is not the same as the mountain Fazua.
Correct. Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing the. Yeah, I'm interested to see if that takes off. We did talk about that the other day. So, e commuting bikes, they're awesome
Yeah.
for a specific reason too. Yeah. Yeah. And I ran into Andrew from Shimano, and we were both e-bike commuting, and it's kind of cool cruising along at 28 miles an hour, commuting on bikes.
That's funny. Someday we'll have to have Andrew on so he can tell the story of you saving the ducklings.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
He loves that story.
I
He
love
tells
that.
it really well.
Yeah, exactly. I'd like to hear him tell it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Andrew, if you're out there, we'll have to get you on soon. Let's see, another question. I kind of like these questions. I actually do like. In the West says, how many bikes is too many bikes to have in my garage? This is the lifelong question. This is an age-old question.
Yeah, there are memes about it. For sure.
How do you
There's
answer?
the classic N+1 formula.
Yeah, that there is.
I think there's a few things at play for as someone who tends to get too many bikes
Yep.
at a time. There's
Yeah.
a few things at play for me. I allow myself to have a bike or two that are mostly nostalgic.
Man, that's a good way to think about it.
I also so for me right now, that is my black market mob.
Got it. Yep.
And that's that's still kind of my pump track bike,
Right.
but it's entering into a time where like if I wanted to really do a lot of pump track and dirt jump type riding,
Yep.
I'd probably build a bike that I wouldn't be so sad if I damaged it.
Right.
Because that's like one of the first mobs built in the S&M factory, like just down the street, pretty sentimental.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's my main kind of sentimental bike that's assembled right now.
Yep. Mine is I have a couple of them, but mine is the Surly
Crosscheck.
Crosscheck.
Yeah, I had one of those. I could see why it would be sentimental.
And it is yours.
the bean green
Bean
one.
green one, yeah.
I rode that bike down some gnarly Laguna trails
Oh my
someday
gosh.
with drop bars.
It's a size like it's like a 50, it might be a 50 or a 52.
It's a small bike.
It's a small bike. Use it as a commuter. It's fully hybrid now. But my son's friends ride that bike and they love riding it. So I use that as not only is it nostalgic, but it's also it continues to be used.
I've got to tell this story.
All right.
When that was my bike, there was this period where I was really trying to not drive very much
Okay.
and seeing if I could use my bike as transportation as much as possible.
Got it.
And I was also in my like 20s still maybe, or early 30s, and living a different lifestyle than I live now.
Right.
So I was out like drinking with my friends and I was getting around on that bike, and I ended up crashing at my friend's house on their couch.
Right.
and waking up the next morning remembering like, oh crap, there's a Sunday shop ride that I have to get to. So I'm in Costa Mesa.
Oh my gosh.
And I ride my bike to the shop ride and get a ride to the ride. And we end up riding Laguna, and that's the bike I brought, so that's the bike I ride. And it had a luggage rack on it.
No way.
And on the steep downhills, I was sitting on the luggage rack. Oh, it was so good.
Oh my gosh. The bikes that we rode on those trails.
Yeah, not that much.
It's outrageous.
Yeah. We rode it down that trail that they say they named it that because it's as sweet as pie.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So a nostalgic bike. And
then I'm allowed one or two kind of bikes that are functional that I use, that I don't penalize myself if I don't use them for 6 months or something.
Right.
So I have a gravel bike that's also like my road bike if I want to go on a road ride that I haven't ridden in over a year.
Right.
It's a steel Kona.
Nice.
It's really it's really just kind of basic and isn't taking up a lot of my finances.
Right.
And I also have that Ute that you gave me, which is kind of that I don't ride much, but it's my like if I want to haul something around town on a bike. And then other than that, the rest of my bikes are pretty much mountain bikes they're mountain bikes that if I don't ride them, if I can't remember the last time I ride it, I start asking myself why I'm not selling it.
Yeah.
Like I have to use them. So everything that doesn't fall into that first category has to get used, and I have to enjoy using it.
Yes.
I can't be like, oh, I got to ride this one now.
Right. Right. Exactly.
And for me, depending on how much I'm riding at the time, how much I'm riding at the time is a factor.
Right.
And how much I'm making it up to the mountains versus doing other stuff. So
because you could have at certain times you might have a shuttle only bike.
Right.
That might look
or a
like
full downhill bike.
Yeah.
Or there have been times in my life where I felt that I needed a proper cross country bike.
Right.
I don't feel that right now, but I might again in the future, but I'm not going to have one unless I'm going to ride it.
That's right. Right. No, those are all good ways to think about it. I would add that there's space there if you have people that if you have body doubles that happen to live with you, that's a very good excuse to have more.
Yep.
And they kind of fit in that functional, like nostalgic category. At least that's where I see these bikes fitting in. So I still have my Thai Salsa.
Right.
I think it is a U.S. made Thai Salsa that's built up. I actually commute on it from time to time. It's got flats on it, and if I'm going to go throw discs at a disc golf course on the way to work, I ride that bike.
Nice.
Because I have, those me wear my tennis shoes and what have you, and then the kids ride it with their friends along with the cross check.
Right. I just thought of another way to look at it.
Yeah.
So, the like Marie Kondo, like does it bring you joy concept?
Right.
So take that and hold on to that for a sec.
Right.
And then like the definition of addiction that is it a problem in your life?
Right.
Where those two intersect. So is it a problem in your life? Like, does it cause problems in your relationships?
Yeah.
Does it just like are you an addict, right?
Man,
does it cause problems financially?
Right.
Does it down to like, do you have space for it, right?
Right.
And then so that combined with does it bring you joy?
Yeah.
I feel like for me, so that's another way to look at it.
And that's a pretty wide range.
Yeah.
Because some people that could be quite a number and it doesn't cause any problems.
Yeah. That's cool. But I would challenge on, are they all really bringing them joy?
Yeah, that is true.
Maybe.
I have a funny story about the number of bikes in your garage. Someone came up to me the other day, and they're much younger than me, and they say, I heard you have like 3 bikes at home. I was like, oh no, I don't answer this.
Well, I do have 3 bikes.
I do have 3 bikes. I think I said that. That is true. I don't think I can answer that with a straight face, but I sound like that though. She's like, how many bikes do you have? I was like, I don't know. 8? bikes.
3 for nostalgia.
No, exactly. My son's ride it, okay? My son's ride them too, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that insight. And it's the bikes that my wife tells me, honey, if you ride them, don't feel obligated to sell them. And she's like, if you're using them, you should keep them, and that's totally fine. So, but I do find that, especially especially now, if I'm not riding a bike, then I'm like,
You know that thing where the bike is fully tuned up and lubed and aired up, and then over a certain amount of time, it needs to be worked on quite a bit before you can ride it again.
Just because it hasn't been ridden.
It's just from sitting there.
Yeah.
Like maybe the tires get dry rotted and the chain gets kind of weird and all that, and the fork seals are cracked and
derailleur needs some.
I think it's good to be kind of cognizant of that's only 2 or 3 years, like sometimes, like
right. Yeah. So how many bikes? I think that's a good approach. Let's see. Maybe one more question.
I like this one from Rad Van Bikes, our buddy Jesse.
Yeah, totally. OC doesn't have a world-class bike park and training facility for freestyle riding. Why?
Why doesn't OC have any bike park? I would add to that.
Gosh,
right. Yes, and to Jesse.
Yes, and for sure.
I've always, back in the day when it really used to be true that a lot of professional bike riders would train in the winter in Southern California. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them were pro downhillers and dual slalom riders and all that. Yeah.
Right.
Free riders.
Right.
I always felt like it was a natural progression that we would have the first year-round world-class bike park. That's not at a ski resort. Right. That's a bike-only bike park.
Right.
And it still seems to me like insurance and I'm sure insurance and liability are hard, are difficult.
Right. I'm
sure land is very, very expensive, and permitting and everything in Orange County is probably difficult.
Yep.
I mean, like, I think a lot of bike parks take place on public land, and I just don't see Orange County letting it happen on any public land, really. Yeah.
But
and maybe that's skeptic. Maybe that's pessimistic of me, and maybe someone more optimistic could make it happen.
Right. Right. Maybe as time goes on, you get foundations like the Laguna Beach Foundation and others, or Laguna Wilderness Foundation, and others that build relationships over time.
Yeah. It would be. Everyone's got their version of how it would be awesome, right? And I'm not here to say mine's right. It's just what would make me happy,
right? But
I feel like it would be really cool if a whole segment of like Limestone Canyon, that I mean, it's a nature conservancy, but it was ranch land. It's not like we're protecting a lot of native, like real untouched native habitats or anything,
right?
It would be really cool if some of that could be a bike park. And the slopes there are kind of a workable. They're not super steep. They're pretty workable. Some of them are really steep.
Right. Which could be part of that experience as well.
Or somewhere in the Santa Anas, I think it would be awesome. And as long as we're talking about it, I think there should be like an OHV area too. Where you can take your Sur-on.
Right.
And where you can take your Jeep. And it doesn't have to be huge, over off Ortega Highway, there's a small OHV area. And
sure.
I would like it to be more cool than that, but it would be better than nothing.
Right. Yeah, without having to drive all the way out.
And that's south of Ortega Highway. It's not in Orange County.
Right. Yeah, I would agree. If you Rad Van Bikes have ideas or others, feel free to share them.
I would definitely be part of the crew that cheers anyone on who does it and wants to be part of it, and definitely could
help support.
Try to make the case that it's a good idea for anyone who's wondering.
Yeah, for sure. Man, is that a podcast?
I think that's a podcast.
Hey, before we sign off, we've been trying this listener questions, and kind of Tuesday before I've been posting on my story, send me questions, either DM or this week I tried that little questions box. So feel free to send us questions anytime. E_Ock on Instagram and Tawny Walling on Instagram. And so send us your questions. We'll try to make this a regular thing.
Yeah, I think it's perfect because a lot of what we do on the shop is rehash questions that we already got asked in the shop.
Yeah.
And that's great. But if it's really fun to have the listeners actually involve themselves.
Yeah, for sure. And
we appreciate it too.
We do. We talked about some heavy stuff today. Go home and hug your loved ones extra tight tonight.
And if you need support, it took me a lot of years to realize that there's people out there who can help.
That is true.
All right. Thanks. Thank you, Ock. Thank you, Jake. Thank you to all the listeners and the crew here at the Path. And for sure, huge thanks to all of the riders who come support the Path and our trade partners. Huge thanks to them. And let's all remember to love the bike we ride.